And welcome to month 5 of the Louisiana block of the month with Summers Haven. So this month's block is the fish puzzle block, and it is reminiscent of the state's extensive network of rivers, bayous, and coastline. Fishing has long been central Louisiana life. It reflects the culture and communities like a meet, where fishing traditions remain part of everyday life and celebration, like the annual Oyster Festival. This block's earliest documented use was in the late 1800s. In your package, so this is what the block is going to look like this month. In your package this month, in your kit, you're actually going to have 2 different mediums. So you'll have 2 different medium fabrics. You'll have a dark, and then you'll have your usual background. I have already cut my pieces. So my squares have been cut to the sizes that are in my cutting instructions. And I'm ready for my first step, which is to make half square triangles. Now, we've made half square triangles in previous month blocks, so we're going to be following the same process that we've done with those. So I'm going to be pairing up 3 of my light background squares with my 3 medium squares, and I'm going to be putting them right side together. I'm just going to be pairing those up. And then I'm going to, on the back side of, I'm going to be drawing a diagonal line on the back side of my light colored squares. And I'm using a friction pen for this. The friction pens disappear with heat. I do recommend, we're using it here. This is going to be a cutting line, so it's fine. If this doesn't disappear, it's going to be totally fine. But I do recommend in general that when you're using a friction pen, you use it in a spot like a cutting line or within a seam allowance, so that if for some reason it doesn't go away, you're still okay. All right, so I've drawn my diagonal lines on all 3 of those pairs. And now I'm ready to do my next step, which is I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch on either side, on both sides of that drawn line. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be right back. Stitched on both sides of the diagonal line that I've drawn. Once I've done that, I can either use my scissors or I can use my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut on that diagonal line. And I'm going to do that for all 3 of my pairs so that I end up with 6 half square triangles. So I've got all that done to all 3 of my pairs. Now I'm going to go to the iron and I'm going to press these to the dark side. So I'm going to take all 6 of these half square triangles and I'm going to take them to the iron now, and I'll press them to the darker side, which is that medium fabric. And then I will be right back. 6 of them pressed toward that medium fabric. I need to square up my half square triangles. And to do that, I'm going to need to take my square ruler that has the 45-degree line on it. I'm going to line that up with the seam in the half square triangle, and I am going to trim it on all 4 sides. So I'll start out trimming it on 2 of the sides, and then I'll shift my ruler around and I will trim it on the other 2 sides. That's going to take care of the dog ears as well and reduce a little bit of bulk in my seams that the dog ears would have created. So there we go. I've actually already done the other 5. So I'm going to move on with our next step now. So I've got all of these squared up to the right size. And now I'm going to start putting together my small fish corner units. It's important in this part that you pay attention because you actually need 2 different kind of layouts of those corner units. So on the first one, and let's see, here they are. Okay. All right. So I'm going to need to take and pair up according to that photo, and you'll need 2 of each layouts. So I'm laying those out right now, and then I will show you. So I'm going to need 2 that are laid out. Let me put this down with that. I'm going to need 2 that are laid out this way, 2 sets of those, and I'm going to need 2 sets that are laid out this way. And you'll see that in the drawing here in your pattern. All right, so now that I've got those laid out, I'm going to stitch those together. That's going to be 4 pairs that I'm stitching together. Well, I'm putting the pairs together, so I'll end up with 4 pairs, and then I'll use those to assemble my corner units. So I'm going to pause while I stitch these together, and then I'll be ready to put together my corner units. I did 2 of this layout of my small fish unit, and I've created 2 of this layout. So now I'm ready to press these. I'm going to press them to the dark, and then I'll be ready to put these together to create my complete corner units. Press them toward the dark, and I also realized in doing so that I misspoke, and I'm not going to re-record this video, but I am going to give you a hint. The layout is actually the same. It's just in how you turn it. So I made a big deal of making sure that you had those laid out the correct way. It is important that you have them laid out the correct way, but they are actually the same. It's just going to be in how you turn it as we do this next part where you're putting together these small fish corner units. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to nest those seams. We pressed both of those to the dark, so they should nest in really nicely. I like to put a pin right in that seam to make sure that it doesn't wiggle on me when I go to stitch these together. And then I also like to put a pin at the beginning and then one at the end. I'm going to do that to both, and then I'll stitch them together with a 1/4 inch, my regular 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I will have my small fish corner units ready to go. So I'm going to stitch these together, and then I'll be right back. My corner units together. My next step is going to be just to press these. I'm just going to press to one side. You could also press open if you choose to press open. Or I know some folks, when they have the corners coming together in this way, they'll sometimes spin them. I'm not going to spin them. I'm just going to press to one side. And I'm going to do that on both of them. I'll press them both to one side, and then I'll square them up. Your pattern does tell you what size your units should be squared to. And then, so I'm going to go do that now. I will press them and I will square them up, and then we'll be ready for our next step. Put together my big fish corner units. And to do that, I am going to take my remaining squares of fabric. That's going to be the light and the dark. And I am going to cut all of those diagonally to make them into triangles. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do that to my light background squares. And then I'll also do it to my dark. Okay. Here I've done it to the light. Now let me do it to my dark. And then I'll be ready to assemble my large fish corner units. Okay, done. All right, let's start putting this together. I'm going to take these. I'm going to take the half square triangles that we had created in the first step, and I'm going to pair them up with 2. They'll each be paired with 2 of the triangles that I've just cut. And you've got a picture here in your pattern that's showing you how to set those up. So I'm going to start out by attaching them in this way. I want to make sure that I'm lining up my corners, and then I'm going to leave that little dog ear off the bottom. And that'll make sure that it remains accurate. Okay. I'm pressing it toward the dark. And now what I'm going to take my other triangle and I'm going to put it in there in the same way. I'm lining up my corners. I'm going to stitch that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I should put a pin in it. Okay. All right, and now I'm actually going to press this one down toward the light, and that's just so that I don't end up overcrowding myself in that space. I don't want to put too much bulk in there. Okay, so now I've got the first corner complete and ready to press. I'm going to do the second one. I'm going to press these, and then I'll be back. Step in putting together our large fish corner units. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this unit that I just created with my half square triangle and my 2 triangles, and I'm going to put it right side together with my large dark triangle. You're going to want to be careful when you're doing this assembly because you're working with bias edges. This is a really big bias edge here for the black triangle. And so I'm going to put some pins in it to help me keep it stable so that I'm not going to be stretching that edge. The other thing you want to be careful of is when you're stitching, I'm going to make sure that when I'm stitching this, that I have it with this side up so that I can watch and make sure that I'm not losing my point, that I'm not cutting off my point when I sew that 1/4 inch seam there. So I'm just going to put a few pins in here, but be careful because those are bias edges. So let me get that in there. I haven't lost my point. I think I did. Oh, that looks awesome. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to press that. I'm going to press that toward the dark. So I'm going to stitch my other one. I'm going to press it toward the dark. And then I will square these up based on what's in my pattern and also to match my other corner units. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll be right back for our final assembly. Pressing, I've squared all my corner units up. And I think I showed you this on a previous video. I keep these design boards in my sewing room. I made them. You can buy them. These are getting a little bit bedraggled, but they still serve their purpose. But it just allows me to lay my block out nicely so that I can see what it looks like. This is super helpful if you're going to be making multiple. So if I was making 12 of these for a quilt, I would actually stack them all up here on my design board and then have it ready to just assembly line them through my sewing machine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put my rows together, and then I will press and attach my rows to each other, and we'll be done. I feel like this is one of our easier blocks for the year. So I hope you agree with me that it is one of our easier ones. I would say the only tricky part is that you are working with bias seams, with bias edges when we cut those triangles. So you do need to make sure that you're being careful not to stretch them. But I do think this is one of our easier blocks. But how could you not I feel like we had to have a fish block in a quilt about Louisiana. So, all right, I've put my top corner units together. Now I'm going to put these 2 bottom corner units together. Then I will go press to the dark, and I'll be right back. I have I have pressed toward the dark, and now I'm ready to attach my rows to each other in this final 1/4 inch seam. So in order to do that, I'm going to nest my seams. Just like we've done before, and that just makes sure that we get a really nice fit of everything going together there. I'm going to put a few pins in. I especially like to have them at the ends so that they don't shift on me. And I'm also going to put one in the middle here. So I'm going to do the same. I'll put it at the end and I'll put it in the middle. One more pin. All right, I'm ready to run my last seam. Okay, I'm going to open up my block, get my pins out. Sometimes I try to take my pins out as I go, but I had set them so that my needle wasn't going to be running over them. So, all right. Okay, that's my fish block. So all that's left to do now is to give it a final press. And then I'll square it up to my 12.5 inch unfinished. But that is our fish block. So let me give it a quick press and then we'll close out. Okay, that's our fish block all put together, ready for me to square up. I think it came out so pretty. I'm excited about this. I hope you're all enjoying the Louisiana Block of the Month. We've got a lot of really great feedback. If you ever have feedback on us and how we can do better with our Block of the Month program or any other program at Summers Haven, just be sure and let us know. But otherwise, I'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody.